All right, December 16th, 2022. I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes and then I will ring a bell. Settling into your meditation posture. Just you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And I encourage you to just notice kind of how your energy feels in your body, depending on how you're sitting. So when the spine is upright, the chest is open, tend to have a little more energy, more clarity as well. And if that's not a manageable or comfortable posture, you can lie down or sit in whatever way supports your practice. And turning the attention inward, feeling the body, feeling the whole body, feeling the breath in the body. And just having a sense of relaxing, releasing any tension. As you exhale, sense of softening. Noticing too, just how you're feeling right now. What's your general mood? What is left over from your day, whether it was a work day, a stress, whether it was a relaxing day. If you're maybe tired or maybe very bright and alert, just noticing. Mindfulness always starts with this awareness, what is happening. We can respond to it, but until we see it clearly, we can't respond skillfully. Oftentimes we react to how we feel. Start trying to control it or change it before we even really see it clearly. And this tends to create a cycle of thoughts and agitation. Well, this beginning point of mindfulness is always a kind of surrender. This being with things just as they are, whether we like them or not. We use the breath as an anchor point, a focal point. With the simple sensations. See if you can get interested in the simple sensations of breathing. the breath isn't exciting, so it doesn't stimulate a lot of thought or energy. So if we can focus on it, it can naturally have a calming effect because there's not much to it. Just breathing in, breathing out, not looking for anything, not trying to achieve anything. Thoughts come and go, and we guide the attention back to the breath, back to the body. It's not a mistake when there's thinking or failing. It's the natural activity of mind. But we try not to give it too much attention, not to get wrapped up in thoughts. Noticing if there's an attitude, an inner attitude you have as you're sitting. You might have the attitude that you're supposed to stop thinking, or an attitude of judgment. Maybe you have an attitude of letting go, or an attitude of kindness. When we see how difficult it is to have a mind and a body, when we look closely at our experience, one wise response is self-compassion. We didn't ask to be born or to live in this framework, but here we are with all its struggles and all its joys. We can have expectations, or we can have acceptance. We have judgments, or we can have love. Even if we have habitual ways of being, we can interrupt them if they aren't supportive of our experience. Sometimes the tissue box gets up against the bell, and then when I try to ring the bell, it doesn't ring properly. So sorry about that, if that came through sounding weird. All right. So I'm going to read some more from Burning Desire. I was going over this before. I'm in this section called Searching for Serenity, which is really about the Serenity Prayer. And so I'm going to pick it up. I'm on page 146, and this is when I was, I guess, I think I was about 2 years sober. I was driving a van, an airport shuttle van, and I had an accident and lost the job because when you crash their van, they don't like it. So yeah, I'm going to just read some of this. This is right afterwards. I spent the next 2 days in bed, nursing my sore wrists and my fear and disappointment. Played the accident over and over in my head, how the Cadillac that I had run into had appeared out of nowhere. I didn't want to accept that I had been overtired and made a mistake. But worse, how was I going to get a job? All those ads in the paper. This was 1987. It was too much. I just couldn't do it. Then I talked to my sponsor. Look through the paper and call 3 places each day, he said. Then you're done for the day. Don't try to do it all in one day. Just keep showing up one day at a time. What he was teaching me was to engage in the process and not get caught up in getting immediate results. It was one of the simplest and perhaps most obvious lessons I ever learned, and it worked. I've used the same process for the last 20 years to get through college, to find jobs, to deepen my meditation, and to write this book. The courage to change the things I can, for me, is mostly about showing up. So oddly enough, the courage I need is to trust the process, to believe that if I just do a little bit each day, I'll reach my goal. Before I learned this lesson, I would kind of rush at a problem and try to get it fixed right away. If it didn't get fixed, I'd give up with what I thought was a, quote, spiritual response. It's not meant to be. That's magical thinking. What's meant to be is that which is and that which can be. And it's only intention and actions that determine what is and what will be within the parameters of what nature allows. That doesn't mean you can do anything, but it does mean that you don't know if you can do it until you've exhausted the process of trying. Everyone has a different point of exhaustion, of course, so this isn't a formula, but really a guide for our hearts. Again, it isn't some external God that gives me this courage, this determination, as in the prayer, God grant me this serenity, right? It's something that is inside me that I have to awaken or develop. When I say the words of the Serenity Prayer, I remind myself of my potential. I remind myself that giving up leads nowhere and persistence may pay off. And if not, I can go back to the first part of the prayer and try to accept my disappointment. The final part of the prayer, the wisdom to know the difference, resolves it. What can I change and what do I need to just accept? Often I don't even get to this question because it's become obvious as I reflect on my situation what I needed to do. So when I do get here, it's often with a sense of relief. I know what to do. My wisdom has shown me already. Wisdom can be an intimidating word. To call yourself wise can seem arrogant. Don't you have to live in a cave for 30 years and grow a long white beard to be wise? There's no doubt that life experience and maybe a lot of spiritual practice helps us to develop wisdom. One formula is experience plus attention equals wisdom. If we really pay attention to life, we'll learn how things work. Attention is crucial. We can have lots of experiences, but if we're not viewing them through discerning eyes, wisdom won't develop, just a lot of stories. Once we've put attention together with experience, we will begin to develop a deep wisdom. This wisdom, once again, comes from within. Is it already there? Are we just awakening it? Or does it have to be planted and cultivated in our heart and mind? I don't claim to know the answer to that. But what's clear is that when it does ripen, when it does appear, it appears inside us. It's not coming as some external voice or inspiration that tells us what is true. The Serenity Prayer became the foundation for growth for me over those early years of sobriety. Gradually, the magical beliefs faded away and were replaced by a practical, karma-based approach to God. Keep showing up, doing the best you can, trying to be kind, honest, and aware. The mad search for salvation, for a fix, for bliss and escape, finally died away as life started to work. A simple faith in the 12 steps and in the principles of recovery, honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness carried me. So it's funny to go back and reflect on the Serenity Prayer. It's not something something I say much anymore. I don't know if I do. I know, as I said earlier in that part of that piece, it's something in my early recovery that I really relied on a lot. But I like to think, and I do believe that I've internalized that the concepts of the prayer. Not that I always accept the thing I cannot change, and not that I always have the courage to change things I do, and not that I always have the wisdom to know the difference, but I didn't say the middle part, right? The courage to change the things I can. But I do think that it's much more of a kind of instinctive response now. So I don't know. I hadn't, other than reading that, I wasn't thinking a lot about what was in there to say more. Well, yeah, I can say a lot more actually, because, and I said this, I think on Tuesday too, that showing up is the theme or the topic that I almost invariably suggest if I'm asked to speak at an AA meeting and they say, and what's your topic tonight? Yeah, I have this great faith in showing up, and it's just really interesting, like the ability to just keep going, when I see people either in recovery or in Dharma practice or in both, in the blend, it's the ones who show up over and over. And a lot of you are fall into that category because you're here with me regularly and you're showing up, and it's, it just, that's how change happens. And I do think, some of the things in that piece, that wish for oh, what's the thing I need to do? What's the next, how do I learn to, how do I meditate? Well, what should I do? And this idea oh, there's some answer that I need to, if I could just figure out the answer, then I'll have things solved and I can move on. Rather than we're not really trying to get an answer. There isn't an answer. It's this way of being, this way of living. And it's, for me, it's very tied in with the precepts and ethics in general and honesty in general, non-harming. I don't know why are those connected in my mind? I think, I guess maybe there is something about humility in that, just showing up and not expecting some excitement, not expecting some reward for the fact that you showed up, but that you just sort of appreciate the value of being present. Because, I mean, showing up, I mean, even just saying it, right? It's like when we talk about being present and being mindful, that's what you're doing when you're showing up and with your body, you're showing up with your attention. You're living that mindfulness. You're not just talking about it. You're being present. So showing up is both a physical thing and a mental thing, right? Because your body can be here without you being mentally here or being here with your presence. But, it's, I guess it ties for me with the ethics as well, because it's the kind of the grunt work of spiritual practice. It's not the glamorous part. It's not the deep samadhi or the ayahuasca trip that gave you all this insight. It's the just, I'm just here, I'm just ordinary person, my friend Bill Alexander had a book called Ordinary Recovery, that sort of idea. That one of my first teachers in LA called his group or his center Ordinary Dharma. Yeah, and I think that's a great kind of place to be, because it doesn't preclude really special, magical, beautiful moments happening, but it doesn't sort of demand that be there all the time, and it doesn't put maybe even special value other than, yeah, that's really nice. Like when I get really concentrated, or when it's a fabulous day, or when it's a great meal, or whatever joy there is in your life. There's not some sense like, oh, this is the stuff. Okay, finally I got it. It's just, oh yeah, this is lovely. And then tomorrow is tomorrow, and the difficulties come. And I mean, it's, and I mentioned, writing a book and showing up, and I get asked fairly often, like, how do you write all those books? Or literally like, well, I have an idea for a book. What do you think I should do? I'm like, well, what you do is you sit down, and then you know that thing with the letters on it, you tap your fingers on them. And what you do is you do that every day. And maybe try it for like an hour a day, maybe 2 hours if you have time, if you can do that. And if you can't do it every day, like do it every week. I wrote one novel one of my really bad novels. I don't know if they're all bad, but I think one or two of them are good. But one of the ones that really didn't work, it was called Guitar String Murder. It was a murder mystery about somebody who was murdered hung from a guitar string, which is a line from that Beck song, hung himself with the guitar string. And I was like, that's a really good, I want to have a book about that. Anyway, I wrote that when I was working full time, and I only wrote on the weekends. And I got it like done in like a year, because if you write like 2 days a week, if you can write like 1,000 words, like 500 words a day, on the weekends, you do that for a year, that's 52,000 words. That's enough for a book. So anyway, now you know the secret. But yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting to have that trust, right? It's not, oh, I have to, because I've been working for the last year on something that may be a book and it may not be. And I keep like, oh, like it doesn't go away, but I take long periods of time away from it because it's sorting itself out in my mind. Maybe, I'm giving it space and I'm practicing. And it's maybe the fact that I'm not writing every day on that is why I started writing some songs. So so now I'm just going to switch gears, because this is what's been on my mind this week, which is I'm trying to think of that. Like I have an idea for like an article. I'm trying to think of that exactly the title. It would be something like the spiritual practice of boredom, something like that. And that, I've been talking about Vedana and the feeling tone, right? Pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And a bunch of you have heard me talking about this some lately, and it's shown up in a couple of different talks. So just to review, every sense experience, including every mental experience, has a feeling tone that is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And there is a formula that says pleasant feelings trigger craving because you want to sustain it. Unpleasant feelings trigger aversion because you want to get away from it. And neutral feelings trigger ignorance or delusion, like because you don't pay attention to it. Then I was reading something from Ajahn, from Bhikkhu Analayo. He could be an Ajahn, but it's just not that title in that tradition, where he said, no, like neutral experiences trigger like searching for something more interesting. So you tend to space out and start thinking about something more entertaining because you're bored. I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I started paying attention more to neutral experiences. Because usually when I'm meditating, I actually focus mostly on unpleasant experiences, like unpleasant feelings. And I breathe with them because that seems like that's what's usually there. Even the ones that can be like, well, like sort of exciting or energy or sort of like unpleasant. So anyway, I often breathe with that. And that's helpful. But when there is a pleasant experience, I also breathe with that and just kind of allow that to maybe radiate and fill up my body and mind. But I realized that neutral experiences tend to calm the mind. So I've been talking about this too. I spoke on Tuesday night up at Napa Valley Insight, so I was talking about this. So I'm not remembering exactly when I said what, but in any case, I have this theory that one of the reasons the Buddha taught mindfulness of breathing is because the breath is a neutral experience. And if you can get focused on a neutral experience, there's a tendency to get very calm. There's a tendency that's going to incline towards equanimity because there's nothing going on. There's nothing exciting that you're like, woo, and there's nothing unpleasant that you're trying to get away from. So that made me think, oh, I should pay more closer attention and concentrate more on neutral experiences. And so I started to notice, like, because a lot of experiences are neutral. So they're often available. So like, step outside. Like if I go outside my house, what I hear is traffic. And it's interesting how, I noticed this on the golf course, how far away are we from the freeway? We're like 5 miles from the freeway, but you can, freeway traffic carries a long way. If you think about it, like it can be annoying, that can seem annoying, but it's basically a neutral thing because it sounds kind of like just water running or wind blowing. It's very neutral. So I was just standing today and like, oh yeah, just listen to the neutral sound, right? And so it's a very nice concentration practice. I feel dumb, sorry. Not really, but in a way, I've been practicing for so long, and whenever I have some like, wow, this is an amazing thing, I'm like, how did I not think of this over the last 42 years? How did I not notice? But it's really just like these different variations and subtle, perspectives you take on things that maybe I have sort of done this already, but I didn't realize I was doing it in a way. But now it's kind of like, it's got me intrigued. So I'll tell you something else about what I realized as I've been thinking about Vedana. Pleasant experiences, it's not so much that what happens to me with pleasant experiences isn't so much that I'm grasping after them. It's if I'm meditating and I feel good, like I'm in a good mood, I tend to have more like positive thoughts, pleasant thoughts. But I still think a lot. I mean, I noticed this early on in my practice, like being in a good mood doesn't make your mind quiet. It's actually because there's a lot of energy there. And so I realized, really, even though there's this formula, and I think the formula is true to a degree. In meditation, I think that when you're having a pleasant mood, there's a tendency just to have more pleasant thoughts and which tend to be like fantasies. You know, an unpleasant mood tends to, guess what, trigger more negative thoughts, right? Which tend to be negative projections, which are also fantasies, by the way, but we don't call them fantasies because we think of fantasies as pleasant. So I'm just putting this out, like, check it out for yourself. Like, if it's true that, like, even good, because, you're meditating, you think, well, I want to be in a good mood, right? Because everybody wants to be in a good mood. But if you find that it's actually like, I feel so great. It was so nice, that conversation I had with my friend and them telling me how great I am or whatever made you feel good, right? And then it's like, blah, 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 like, oh, well, okay, not as helpful. Try just like look for a neutral experience. And I mean, your breath is a neutral experience, but like try like to really like, oh, can I concentrate just on the neutral feeling of this neutral experience, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you're focusing on the fact that there's just not much going on in that. It's like, there's really not much happening here. And then what can very easily happen is that a very pleasant meditative state comes over you. So it actually, the neutral turns into pleasant, but because it is then underpinned with concentration, it's not as likely to take you into thinking. So what you do then is that you start to, this is how you work with the PT and Sukha, the jhanic factors. If there starts to be this nice upwelling feeling, let it really well up, let it fill you up. The Buddha describes this way of like saturating, steep your body in this feeling. Let the feeling, whatever it is, really take you over and like lift you for a little while, but keep breathing with it and feeling this like pleasant energy. And then again, kind of turn the temperature down, turn the volume down on that energy, just let it settle. And that's like another stage then of concentration. But I think that starting with the neutral, thinking of it and being very intentional about focusing on the neutral and letting your mind get absorbed in the neutral is a really good way to just think about what we're doing using the breath. Like, because there is often this question like, well, what's so special about the breath? Why am I using the breath? Well, I think there are different reasons, because the breath is like prana, it's chi, it's got energy to it, but also its neutral quality makes for a really good calming object, meditative object. So I wanted to come around to that topic because it's been on my mind, and you can see that I'm processing it, right? I'm still working it out, but I hope that's helpful. So I think because that's kind of the end of a little piece, I'm going to let that be the end for me now. And I think, can I leave the meeting without I don't think I can. Oh, yeah, I can leave the meeting without ending the meeting. And then, Angela, you can just end the meeting use the end meeting button.
Yep.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. I will be back on Tuesday morning. And thank you. And